for authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be PHILLIP HOPERSBERGER. And to be honest, he was only on the show live one time before that I goofed and I forgot to turn the encoder on. However, I just now made sure that I saw that stream start when I clicked it to make sure it was going. And a matter of fact, I'm looking at it, it's going now. So we know that ain't happening this time. We're going to be talking about his book, Xposure. But before we do, I want to let everybody know if you want to learn more about him, go to www.totallyRighteousCopy.com. That's spelled TOTALLYWRITEOUSCOPY.com. And he'll have all kinds of information there about not only that, but some other things that he's into that you might be interested in. If you guys would like to ask questions, the call-in number is 832-632-7904. Don't forget that I do have an app out now for, actually Android. I'm working on getting one for iPad and iPhone, but so far I'm up to iPad. If you look underneath the chat room, there's an image that says get our app. Just click on that bad boy and you can download it directly to your, Android, whichever phone you got that has an Android. As I understand it, Samsung ain't the only one that carries it, I don't think. Also, don't forget to Talk Now Radio is listener supported, so it helps keeps the advertisers out, the people that might want to, restrict information or censor information out. If you'll support us with your donations or clicking on advertisings, if you're going to buy one of my guest books, click on it from my site to get there. I get an affiliate fee for that, so anything you can do to help keep us on the air is appreciated and to everybody's benefit. Philip, how you doing tonight?
Very good, very good. Thank you, sir. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing a little better than usual. Given the fact we have all this rain going on. Usually when it rains, it just affects my emphysema and my lungs and, all the pollen irritates them and that. But maybe it's because we had a dry day today. My breathing's doing a little better than it would be, ordinarily on a rainy day.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
So,
And the encoder switch is gone.
Yes, it is.
All right, good. Yeah, last time.
But I could turn it off if you like.
Well, at some point you may want to, depending on how this goes. But last time we got about 35 minutes into it, and I think somebody called in and said, "Hey, you're not broadcasting."
Yeah, that was a little embarrassing.
Well, I'm glad I could be part of history. Your first mistake this year, right?
Actually, first for that mistake ever, but I don't know if that would be the first for this year or not. Depends on whether it's on air or off air. Off air, I make a bunch more than I do on the air. Okay, now, but we're here to talk about your book, Xposure. And Philip, it's an interesting thing that since I first started talking to you about Xposure, I've had 3 or 4 other guests that we've talked about the Nephilim and ancient aliens on, and I've got 3 or 4 more coming up in the near future. And while your book's not specifically about that, it does include it, in other words.
No, that's pretty neat. It's nice to be on the cutting edge.
Must be something synchronistic going on, or synchronistic, should I say.
Yeah, it's just all happening at the same time.
So, now, I remember I read your book before, and I liked the way that it started with the meeting between the Pope and the different presidents and how it got into, the main character. And I know his name was Stanley, but I can't remember. I have always had trouble with your main character's last name. Strassen Witteners.
Stan Stanislaw.
Stan Stanislaw. I don't know what it is about Stanislaw, but it just does not stick in the mind like Stan does.
Yeah.
But, he turned out to be a pretty interesting character and not really such a half-bad guy. But why don't we start this out by you letting everybody know a little something about yourself and what kind of interested you in wanting to write this particular novel?
Sure. I grew up in Detroit. went to Michigan State University and was studying journalism, and had always been kind of a gifted writer, just a natural ability. Not very good at math, but I could always write. And somewhere in the course of college, I became a Christian, and I ended up going into the ministry for a long time. But back in 98, I just felt really compelled to get back into writing, and so I resigned my pastorate and started writing. And I wrote this book, Xposure. It's a supernatural thriller, and the idea had always been kind of running around in my head. I've got a brother-in-law who's a Navy SEAL, and Stan Stanislaw is a SEAL, and he's also a double agent. And he's got a bit of a dilemma that when he gets activated, he's a sleeper agent, been raised in the United States. When he actually gets activated, he's had a change of heart and doesn't want to do it. And so he becomes kind of a man stuck between two countries. The CIA and FBI are after him, and the KGB is also after him. This is still in the time of the Soviet Union, because they want him to go through with his mission, which is destroy the United States. But in the course of that predicament that he's in, he discovers a bigger plot, and that's where we get into the UFO and alien stuff. So I kind of took some of my theological background and some of my pet theories and some of, my appreciation for the X-Files and Tom Clancy, and kind of rolled it all into one and made it into the first part of a trilogy. So, it's available on Amazon. Xposure with an X, not EX. Xposure. It's available on Amazon. And I also dabbled in screenwriting. I've written a screenplay about the Civil War. It's called Something Gray. It's also available on Amazon, and we can talk about that later if you like.
Sure. But when we're on this particular topic, would it surprise you if the end time deception, the second coming of the apocalypse and that, if it involved the Nephilim in any way, shape, or form?
No, it would not surprise me one bit. And as I said, I wrote the first book in this trilogy with the idea that, I think UFOs are real, but I don't think they're what people think they are. And I don't want to say too much more than that without giving away some of the book, but I think that... So
much for my next question.
Yeah.
I was going to say, can you explain what you mean by that? But
yeah.
You could cover that one before I could get it out of my mouth.
Well, and that's quite a task in and of itself. I don't want to give the book away and what it's about. I really appreciated that you enjoyed it. I think you said you read it in 2 days or less, 3 days maybe. I don't remember now.
I think it was 2 days.
Yeah, which was pretty impressive. I mean, usually if a book stinks, you know it in the first chapter and you wade through to the second and then you toss it. At least I do. So I was impressed that you finished it. And that was before you wanted me to do this show. So I think your interest was genuine. But yeah, I think the deception that the New Testament talks about in the last days will definitely have some bearing on Xposure and what I wrote. How's that for being obtuse?
Yeah, that'll work. It's a good start.
Yeah.
But, I've been doing radio hosting for some 7 odd years now, so as you could probably well imagine, out of all the guests I've had, all the books I've read, I've heard of just about a little bit of almost everything by now. And one thing I can honestly say is, much like you, within the first chapter or two of a book, I pretty much can get a good idea where the ending is going, in other words. That's not a real uncommon thing. But in your particular case, it did kind of, in my opinion, give an inkling of where it was going in a sort of a way, but it left out a lot to be desired in the path to how it was going to get there. Mm-hmm. If that makes any kind of sense to you.
Yeah, I think you and I have an advantage over anybody listening who hasn't read it. We know what you mean. But and I know you didn't like the ending because the ending goes right into the second book, so I kind of leave you hanging there. So I apologize.
Cliffhanger, big cliffhanger.
Yeah. So I apologize sort of in advance, but not really. That's what you want to do.
Not a very heartfelt apology.
Sure, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. And I appreciate your kind words. Yeah. I think when you're writing something like that, you want to not give away where you're going, and I think I accomplished that. And
Well, yeah, because you leave me wanting to know the rest of it. Now I got to go get the next book.
yeah, which is a little bit on hold. I'm working on a second screenplay. I think I mentioned that to you before. I'm not sure, but I'm working on a comedy that I need to get done. But in the meantime, I've been doing other work that's kind of taken up some of that time. So the second book for the Exposure trilogy is probably a good year away.
Well, that's a long time to wait.
Yeah, I'm sad.
Well, I was asking you that question just a minute ago about the Nephilim being connected to the end time, because it just so happens yesterday I talked to a Mark Gibbs. He actually come looking for me on Facebook. He said something about I was trying to get him on my show 2 years ago, and he just now got the message today or yesterday, and I'm like, and they call it email the fast mail, do they?
Yeah.
But at any rate, he's got a book called Final Deception. Only his is not a novel. It's not an action. It's a educational, alternative historical type, thing.
Uh-huh.
And he's making a serious case, connecting the Nephilim to the end time deception. I've gotten about 2 chapters into his book, and I see where he's going. However, he's done such a job so far of coming up with strands of information that I hadn't been able to find, that it leaves me wondering what's in between that I might still be missing. Mm-hmm. Similar to what you did, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
But so that just got me to wondering if by any chance you thought that maybe, this guy isn't just dreaming, maybe he might be onto something, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read his stuff. Gibbs was his name? Is that what you said?
Yeah. And his book's called Final Deception.
Yeah.
He said the physical copy ain't out yet.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to be interviewing him probably, I think it's October I got him set up for. Looking forward to it also. Anyway,
I was going to say, one of the nice things about writing fiction is that I can go anywhere I want. He might be limited a little bit to the facts.
Yeah. I don't know. I've seen some authors, though, that would build fiction around the facts, which is similar to what you did in your book. You kind of, took some information about the Nephilim and built the fiction around that. Mm-hmm. And what you knew about UFOs. So, I guess in a way you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, maybe.
What would be some of the things that you'd want to tell my listeners about Exposure?
Without giving away the plot, you mean?
Yeah. I'm being very careful to kind of put that monkey in your doorstep.
It's a phenomenal book. You should see the reviews. I had some guy write a review, I think it was yesterday, on Amazon. Just makes you wonder if his mom let him out of the basement. But he gave me a 1-star and said, not good, not great. I was like, why did you take the time to even do that? That was silly. But back to your readers. I think it's a pretty good read. I think you'd agree with me. It's entertaining. I think I tried to keep it short. I mean, I think some novels can be 200-300 pages and you feel like you're slogging through it. You want to get started. I wanted to keep it short, knowing that there's 3 books. So I kept it about 200 pages, less actually, I think. So I think it's a quick read. I think it reads pretty tight. It's gotten some nice reviews other than the one I just mentioned, but he's back in his basement now, and I think his mom's got the door locked, so I won't have to worry about that. I think it's interesting because it's relevant. It's relevant to a lot of things that people wonder about, especially with the Bible. Before I became a Christian, I thought the Bible was just kind of a bunch of do's and don'ts and kind of boring and drab. And I remember my mom in Sunday school, I was first grade, she used to say, the Bible is a fascinating book. It's got murders and wars and, monsters and all kinds of exciting things and demons and angels. And, she made it sound interesting. And I never really bought that until I started reading it myself and started reading some of the prophetic stuff and the eschatology and things related to the end times. And I found that just fascinating because predicting the future just made it a much more different book than any other book. So I think I think if you have an interest in the Bible or you're curious about it, if you have an interest in UFOs, if you're interested in espionage and Navy SEALs and the KGB and all that kind of stuff, I think you'd enjoy it.
Well, the one thing I was mentioning, I think on the last time we was interviewed over at, or did the interview at Revolution Radio, was if you like Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons, you would also like your book. It's very similar in many ways. Actually, it comes closer to being similar to Angels and Demons than it does the Da Vinci Code, but still, it's the same kind of mixture of end times and cloak and dagger, in other words.
Yeah, that was pretty high praise. That's very kind of you. Thanks.
Oh, but it really is an interesting book. That's why I can't wait for the year to go by to get the next copy. I'll have to hold you up at gunpoint to get it.
I will be in touch.
Yeah, because you're going to come back and want to tell everybody about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Now, I take it that you're gonna try to shy away from the actual times that we're living in until the third book, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of like the Terminator in the sense that it's futuristic, but it's not Star Trek. It's now futuristic 10, 20 years in advance. So, yeah, it'll be a contemporary future.
And when you write these here, or writing this series, is it really closely related to what you were expecting yourself to have happen in the end days?
Wow, that's a great question. Is it what I expect?
Yeah, I kind of figured maybe when you wrote it, it was a means of expressing thoughts and concerns and maybe theories that you had going on.
Yeah, I'd say in a macro sense, it definitely is what I think is going to happen. In a micro sense, in some of the fictional stuff that I talk about, I'm not sure about that. I think probably not. But I think overall, my theory of how things are going to shake out has good potential.
I don't know. I think David Icke would think you're right about the micro as well. Are you familiar with his work?
No, I'm not.
That explains a lot. He's had a lot of books come out, and he's personally of the belief that British royalty actually shape-shifting into lizards.
Really? Yeah, I stopped doing LSD back about, I think I was 19.
Okay, I'll give it to you. It does sound wild, but with that being said and being true, if you actually Google him and listen to watch some of his videos, you'll come to notice that one thing about him, his research is very sound. It's the interpretations of some of the stuff that he gets that gets to be a little on the wild side, in other words.
That sounds a little wild for me.
I don't know. They did used to say in the ancient texts that some of the gods were so ugly they wouldn't be seen in public.
I'll have to take your word for it on that.
Well, okay, that's what I've read on the internet from other authors. Who's to say if they weren't misinterpreting something themselves? That's the only thing about when you're here in America and you're reading different works by, say, you, Zechariah Sitchin, David Icke, William Henry, some of those, and things don't always match exactly. Some of these people, they've been had access to go to the original text. Some have not. You have to take their word for it because you don't have the means to go and the knowledge to actually read them yourself. So without that, and then even if you did, do you know how much the original writers of the ancient texts were fudging?
Yeah, or how much acid they were doing. Who can say? Yeah, I tried to keep it my own personal theological theories based on what I've read in the Bible. So I think anybody can go there and read what I read. But originally, I don't know about originally, but initially, I guess my intent was just to write an entertaining book. So even though my theories are in it, I'm not really trying to convince anybody this is what's going to happen. But if it does,
you'll be there to say, I told you so.
What? What'd you say?
I said if it does actually happen, you'll be there to say I told you so.
Well, I'll sell a lot of books for sure. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, I would imagine. I would expect you to sell a lot. I'd be surprised if you didn't. I'm pretty sure that anybody that reads the book would probably recommend it to other people. And God knows it'd make a great gift for somebody that's interested in this type of material.
Yeah.
So I'd be surprised if it didn't. Now, you said you was also working on this something gray. Did you want to take a minute to tell us a little something about that?
Yeah, sure. Part of my interests aren't just in theology, but also in history, and specifically the Civil War. And I do a lot of reading on history. And I was reading about, the 150th anniversary of a lot of Civil War battles is happening since, the last 3-4 years. And so I was reading about a guy who's a little bit obscure but well known in the South, and his name is John Singleton Mosby. Mosby was a guerrilla fighter for the Confederacy, a colonel, and an incredible guy. Just the kind of stuff that Robin Hood and King Arthur and stuff like that is made up of.
Josie Wells.
Yeah, you just read about what he did and what he accomplished, and you just can't believe it really happened because he was just amazing. And his hero was in the American Revolution, the Swamp Fox, Francis Marion, who the movie The Patriot was loosely based on with Mel Gibson. But he just had this theory of hitting and running, shoot and scoot kind of thing. And he operated in Northern Virginia, and he became so successful at opposing the Union troops that his 3-county area where he primarily operated outside of Warrenton, Virginia, became known as Mosby's Confederacy. And the Gray Ghost was his nickname because nobody could catch him. And he was never captured once he had his own command. And he just did some amazing things. So I was reading about him, and I thought, man, this is a movie. This guy has just got some incredible stories that it reads like a movie. And I thought, I've never written a screenplay. I'm going to give that a shot. So I did. I wrote a screenplay about John Mosby's life. It's about 90% true. Took some liberty to make it a story, and it's also available on Amazon as a screenplay, as an ebook, and in print. And I just really, really like it. I think it would make a great movie. I entered it in some contests in Hollywood, and it did really well. Top 10 or 15% in 3 of the major contests. One of them is the contest that the Oscars puts on. They had like 8,000 entries. So I was pretty happy that it did so well for a first-time screenwriter. But period pieces, as Something Gray is called, is very hard to get done because it costs a lot of money. Like Steven Spielberg's Lincoln took him about 10 years to get that on film, and he's got a pretty good name to be making movies, and he had a hard time. So I don't know if it'll ever get done, but it's a good read, and I've had a lot of professional endorsements and compliments about it. So it's kind of my other hat that I wear.
Might even become part of school curriculum one day.
I did have somebody ask me if they could use it in their school curriculum, and it is honest in the evaluation of the slavery situation then. So some of the words aren't that great for young kids to be learning, but that's the way it was then. So that's the way I wrote it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the majority of the slaves owned in the southern states?
There were slaves in the North, too. There were slaves in the White House, actually. Well, they were servants, but might as well have been slaves. But there were slaves in the North, but yeah, primarily they were in the South. And the story basically is Mosby and his slave, Aaron Burton, who's a real guy. They were friends in real life, and yet Mosby fought for the South, knowing that winning would prolong his friend's, slavery. So he's kind of a tragic hero because he and his slave go off to war together, and one obviously hopes he loses, and the other one hopes he wins, and so there's some tension there. But it's a good story. Something Gray.
You're talking about a film here. Now, you say you don't know if it's ever going to hit the big screen or not. Do you plan to put it out in DVD format?
No, it would be too expensive for me to put together. I mean, between train wrecks and horses and soldiers and cannons and, all that, it would just
too many effects.
It would cost millions. Yeah. I mean, a movie like that would probably, cheaply made, would probably be $100 million.
Wow.
Yeah, I only look rich. I'm not.
That's something you said 2 or 3 times the last time we did a show.
Last time I said
No. You say you only look smart.
Yeah, now I only look rich. No, that wouldn't happen. Not on my. I mean, I could try and raise money to do it, but it would take. If it took Spielberg 10 years, I think it would take me 50.
Yeah, I imagine by now that Spielberg has the money, don't have to raise it anymore.
Yeah, and with Lincoln, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but I think it cost him $80 million to make, and maybe made $300 million. Where something like The Hangover, you could spend $80 million and make $600 million. So Hollywood prefers to make easier movies than something that's period pieces, unless you really have somebody who's really got a pet interest in it, kind of like 12 Years a Slave or, The King's Speech. Movies like that aren't as easily made unless somebody important is behind it. I
think a lot of it has to do with whether or not there's a market for it.
Yeah, and with Hollywood, everything is really thinking more international too. I mean, the Civil War might not be that interesting in China, but it is in the South of America, so... Yeah, they're not interested in making good movies necessarily. They're interested in making money, and that's what Hollywood is. It's a business, just like anything else, NFL or hockey or baseball. So, whether or not it gets made, for right now, it plays in the theater of my mind.
Well, anything in the public eye is a business by necessity. I mean, you just can't put anything out in the public without it costing you money, so you have to turn it into a business.
Yep, that's true.
So
that's one of my other interests. And then right now I'm also working on a screenplay on the Detroit Lions, my favorite football team, who, as you probably know, even if you're casually interested in the NFL, stink. But they're getting better. But I'm writing a screenplay about the Lions that's a comedy. What else?
Actually, I'm not a big fan. When I was a kid, my dad never took me to the ball games, so I just never developed a taste for it. However, I did develop a taste for wrestling. Go figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, that's some of the other things I do. Screenwriting.
Have you ever thought about turning your Xposure into a screenwriting somewhere down the road?
Yeah, well, my wife, I don't know if I told you this before, but my wife said, I think you're mixed up. You should have made Xposure a screenplay. It would have sold immediately, and then made Something Gray a novel, and it wouldn't be expensive to produce, and everybody would read it. So she thinks I got it backwards, that Something Gray should be a novel and Xposure should be a screenplay. So I've thought of doing that, converting them and adapting them to their opposite, mode. But I haven't done it yet, but it's been suggested.
Well, these action plays are really popular in today's market, and look how well the Da Vinci Code did, for example. And the ones that include, ancient mysteries and all the secret symbolism and stuff like that, especially, that tends to just add a little honey to the pot to the movie makers, I think.
Yeah. Well, see, that's a good example. Was it National Treasure where they had...
Yes, exactly my point. National Treasure, Da Vinci Code, both of them were steeped in symbolism, and they both just took off.
Yeah, I think I think the whole conspiracy market is very, very viable. And also those are more like hangover type movies that are cheaper to produce, where you're not, having, turn of the century, wardrobe and train wrecks and explosions. You can get away with a lot more things that are more, so maybe Xposure, which is contemporary, would be a better screenplay.
I'm trying to think if I remember anything that I read in Xposure that would have required special effects, and I honestly, aside from one thing that I can't mention, can't think of anything other than that one thing.
I'm going to warn you, don't give it away. It would be a lot more feasible to produce that as a movie for sure than Something Gray.
And I'm sure even with that one part that I'm talking about, I'm sure you pretty well know which part it is.
Yeah.
It would not be very hard or expensive to do a special effect on it.
Right. Yeah, I think they can do that pretty easily now and pretty effectively. Oh, we're dancing around the bush here. Nobody knows what we're talking about. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's going to make them all the more curious, ain't it?
The suspense is building.
See what happens when you put handcuffs on me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell me I can't
Let's just tell
give
them how
away.
it ends. Okay,
Huh?
so Stan and the girl. Oh, no, I can't.
Oh, yeah, and
No, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
there is something else about Stan and the girl. Was that they're going to blossom any more further down the road?
It is going to blossom indeed. There's going to be a very big blossom. It'll be a very exciting blossom. The blossom will be front and center.
A new identity, so to speak.
A new character for sure.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I thought. But see, that's being kind of really cryptic on our part.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. I don't know. Did you bother to look up the Greek in the last line of the book?
No, I did not. What was I?
I'm not telling you.
I don't have that book open in front of me right now. It's on my hard drive. I thought you interpreted it in the last line of the book, didn't you?
No, I didn't. Yeah.
Where did I get that idea?
I don't know.
But no, I did not look it up. I don't remember why I didn't. I think I had my mind elsewhere at the time. I even forgot about it, to be honest with you.
Oh, well, now you have some homework. By the time the sequel comes out, I expect you to have looked that up and interpreted it.
Oh, look it up and then forget it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this time we've gotten about 30 minutes into the show and the whole thing's being recorded. What are some of the fine points you'd like my listeners to hear about that is safe to tell them?
Well, let's see. I can't really give the plot away since it's fiction, but I can say that if you like the X-Files, I think you would enjoy it. My idea in putting it together was kind of taking Tom Clancy's military background, SEAL kind of, Hunt for Red October type characters, and meshing them with the supernatural elements that you'd see in the X-Files. And so that's the overall premise. I think if you enjoy a good page turner, something that you can relate to the characters pretty well, you would enjoy it. And I think if you have any interest in the Bible or in the end times, UFOs, things of that nature, you'd also find it a compelling read. And again, as I said before, I wrote it to be kind of short. It's under 200 pages. Let me see here. In print, it's around 180. So it's not something that's you're gonna be in. You look at it sitting on your nightstand, going, "Oh, geez, that's gonna take forever to get through that."
I think it was 178 on Kindle.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. I remember now. I said I had to find it. It was on my hard drive. I just remember where I got it at. It's in my Kindle. And yeah, I think I remember it being 178 pages. I noticed that you didn't really mention a lot in the way of Bible verses in that. Was you going to be doing any more in the way of Bible verses in any of the future ones?
Like I said, I wrote it to be entertaining, and so I think if the Bible works in the story, if it helps to continue the story and push it forward, then yes. But it's not intended to be, a preachy kind of a book. I'm not trying to, to tell you what to believe or something. I'm trying to give you an idea that the Bible has some pretty interesting things in it that you might want to check out for yourself, because this may be true. This may actually happen. As I said, in the little quote, we're only one generation away from extinction. And, the church is one generation away from extinction too, as well as us. So, where the Bible fits in, I'll probably throw in a verse or two, but I'm not trying to preach or make anybody think what I think. I'm just trying to, entertain you and have you do some wondering on your own.
Actually, that's the same thing that Dan Brown was trying to do. And one of the worst things I think you could do is try to be too preachy in a book. That's a good sleep spill right there. But what I had in mind, and I don't know what you would think of it, it is your book and your business. If there was a way to, add new depth or understanding to the verse, like decrypticizing a meaning or something to it, if that wouldn't add a little interest and add a new dimension to it, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I've always been of the understanding that, most verses, probably all, have one original intent. But there is symbolism in the Bible, as you know, from Daniel and Revelation and elsewhere. So I think you probably could do that a little bit, but I'd be careful not to overstep my bounds. But yeah, I think you could within reason, but each verse, I think, has one interpretation.
Actually, that's under controversy. I know a lot of people in the church, different groups, one will tell you that there's only one interpretation. One will tell you there's no personal interpretation. There's many interpretations, and nobody can seem to agree on that, or actually a lot of other things in the Bible as well. Now, while I've been sitting here talking, I opened up your book, and the end of our beginning, that's the page before or 2 pages before the last. Okay, yeah, this is done in total Greek. How can I look it up and interpret it? How would I search it? I mean, this is like gibberish because it's all Greek letters, in other words.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that, Rice. Yeah, it is Greek, so it's definitely translatable. And the New Testament was written in Greek. And so that is a hint that leads you into the sequel.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Actually, I wonder if I couldn't just copy and paste it just the way it is into... Oh, you know what? I just remembered something. Google has a language translator on it.
Yep. Yeah, it's not that hard to do. You just have to want to. I think it's the same as understanding the Bible. People are just lazy. They'll say, oh, this, that, and the other thing. But if you really make an effort, it's pretty easy to understand.
Don't you think that, in all honesty, that most of humanity is lazy just as a part of their nature?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean, I can't think of anybody who wouldn't rather do things the easy way than the hard way, and sometimes the easy way is not as near as good a quality. Sometimes it is. Yep.
I think it takes some effort. You got to seek. You got to make the effort if you want something to happen.
I think it goes back to Eve. One of the first things she noticed about the fruit was pleasure. Well, people want pleasure more than they do work, let's face it.
Well, I think the lesson there is not to talk to snakes. You see a snake in your yard, don't talk to them.
I don't know. I'd rather talk to them than have them bite me. But maybe it depends on who the snake is. Maybe if you talk to him, he will bite you, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I got that verse opened up. Before I talk to you again, I'll try to get that thing Googled. It's not always easy to copy things inside a Kindle. It didn't want to give me the whole entire passage at once, so I may have to do it one line at a time or even one word at a time. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to be talking to you, and, you could tell that I'm distracted trying to do that at the same time from my voice.
Yep. Yeah, do that another time. But I put that in there as a clue to go into the second book.
So why did you choose to put it in there in Greek instead of English?
Because the New Testament's written in Greek, and if I wrote it in English, you would know it. But if I wrote it in Greek, you would have to want to know it.
Okay, well, that tells me something right there. I don't know if you want me to say it or not, but, you made it pretty obvious that it's a Bible verse.
It is, yep.
So there's a Bible verse that will lead you into the second book. That's an interesting concept, especially after I just asked you about Bible verses.
Right, yeah. Well, I do also mention Noah, as you know, in the book. So
right.
That's a reference to Genesis 6, which, by the way, I think, did you see the movie Noah?
No, I did not. I heard about it.
It was a waste of time. What a joke. when they could have done the real story of Noah and made it extremely cool. It went off on some weird stuff. In the first couple minutes, they're doing these magical rock creatures that it's just ridiculous. So that was a waste of time. Don't bother seeing Noah.
Well, can I actually state here live on the air the last name you gave Noah and where it leads to, where we can discuss that, or is that letting out too much at once?
Yeah, I think that would blow the whole thing right out of the sky. We'd have Led Zeppelin right there.
Well, I just thought I would ask because
appreciate you asking.
Maybe next year when your next book comes out and you've had time for people to read your book, we can come back and we can discuss that, because there's some interesting angles that you can, discuss and theorize about around that particular first and last name, the way you gave it to them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to be coy a little bit and also a little misdirection, and yet, I think when you're a reader, when you discover something for yourself, it's much more powerful. And so that's what I was trying to do with that play on words, is to, when you do realize what it is, and you probably did sooner than most because of your experience, but when you realize it yourself, then you go, aha, okay, that's kind of cool. So that's what I was looking for. So I'd hate to give that away now, but I think when things are less direct, they always tend to have a little more power when you figure it out yourself.
Well, the thing that was sticking out for me is saying it the way you did it. It has certain implications that would be pretty amazing if it worked out that way, but would also not be very pleasant for the church at the same time. At least what the understanding that I grabbed from it, or the implication I grabbed from it when I read it, in other words.
Yeah. I did actually have a couple people who were very staunch Catholics refuse to read it after reading the first chapter, which was kind of unfortunate, because it's not a knock on Catholicism at all and has very little to do with Catholicism after the first chapter, but they just were, thinking I was Dan Brown or something. But all press is good, right? Even if it's bad press. So.
Actually, a lot of people don't seem to realize that the fact that bad press actually serves a useful purpose.
Yeah, Miley Cyrus would agree with you.
I can think of a lot of people. Look at the bad press that Dan Brown got from the Catholic Church, and his book sold millions and ended up turning into a movie. His next book, The Symbol, I think it's called, ended up going into a big major seller, and last I heard they're talking about making a movie into that. And bad press does not always mean a bad outcome.
Oh yeah, all press is good. That's what anybody in marketing will tell you.
And in all honesty, there are people out there like Eric Bishaw that would tell you that bad press can be better than good press. The ones that had this here theory that controversy sells, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you should go on Amazon and write a really bad review for me so I'd sell millions.
Then if it didn't work, you'd get mad at me. Actually, what I do is I go in there and talk really cryptically about the book and make everybody wonder.
Yeah, I just want to apologize in advance. Some questions I just can't answer because it would give it away, and I'd rather you read it. But you just have to go on Royce's word. If he read it in 2 days, it must have been okay.
Yeah, guys, it is an interesting read, in my opinion. Anybody out there who's listening to the sound of our voice knows that if we tell you everything that's in the book, you got no reason to buy it and read it. And of course, his time to make it and labor into it cost him something, and to do it for free, he wouldn't be able to, do any other books or any other movies if he did them all that way naturally. So there's a certain amount that all my authors have to keep private. I myself, I like to kind of whet people's appetite a little bit if I can, especially on ones that I know that are good and they're going to like it when they get it, because then I know they'll always forgive me for tempting them the way I did.
Yeah. And you said that people can buy it through your website and then you get some sort of a percentage of that?
Right. I have an affiliate account with Amazon.
Oh.
And the way that works is when I make up your description, I put your picture up there. I put information about you, your bio. And underneath that, I put your book description. And then underneath that, I put your book cover with a link going back to Amazon. And if you click on that Amazon link to go there, I think it's like a 4% commission or 3%, something like that. It's not a lot, but the more sales you make, the more it adds up to, in other words.
Yeah, good. That's good. Good for you.
That's my way of keeping the radio show going on the air. That and the Google ads I put up at the top because I don't charge anybody anything for the use of my forums or blogs or photo gallery or web tools or any of the other stuff I have on my site, in other words.
Now, you read this I guess it's been 3 or 4 weeks ago now. What do you remember as far as scenes? What do you remember in the story that struck you and, you still remember? Because usually a good book, you'll remember certain things. You're like, oh, that one scene where they were doing this or that.
Well, one of the things I already told you stuck out to me like a sore thumb, and it was probably because of the implication it would make if it did pan out that way, was about Noah. And also, the other thing I can't mention it.
I have you at a disadvantage at my disadvantage. Well,
yeah, that's really not fair to go there knowing I can't say everything.
Yeah. Well, I when I was writing it, Gillum Jeffries is the Bible professor in the story. I really enjoyed writing the scene where he was in the cave, stealing that archaeological fact, that archaeological artifact. You remember that?
Yeah, but if I remember correctly,
don't give it away.
I was about to say, he didn't ever actually, you never identified with that. It was either his artifact you never really identified clearly or the one the Pope had.
Yeah, it wasn't the Pope. It was his.
Okay, yeah, I remember what the Pope had, but I'm not going to say right here and now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was his. You never really identified it clearly. So you left people wanting more there. Is it going to be identified in one of your future books, by the way?
Yeah, that was going to be in the second book. Yep.
Yeah, because I'm really kind of curious about that. So you really got 2 artifacts involved in this series that are of major import.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Now, without actually saying anything, because actually I don't have anything from your book, you left it a mystery. One of the things that I would think about, though, would be anybody that read the Sumerian text or the interpretations that people had of them know that, according to Sumerians, their gods had tablets of destinies they called memes. If somebody was to find such a tablet and bring it to light, that could have major impact on the future.
Yeah, that might work out good in one of the next books.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what he had in that one, but
yeah.
Have you ever thought about an ongoing series for Xposure?
That's a good question.
Instead of just 3.
Yeah, I have not, but you could easily turn that into a television series or something. Just like the X-Files. I mean, they built that whole thing on what was he looking for? His brother or his mother or something? I can't remember now. Agent Mulder.
Well, I was thinking you could work it like when you finish these 3 series, you could switch to a new type of circumstance, a new type of story, a new setting, but with the same people.
Yeah.
Kind of like moving on to their next case, in other words. Stan Stanislaw solves this case and moves to the next one.
Yeah, that is like X-Files. That reminds me of The Night Stalker when I was a kid. Darren McGavin. Do you remember that show? He would go around.
I remember MacGyver.
No, Darren McGavin was in a show called The Night Stalker. And he was a reporter that investigated supernatural stuff, vampires and werewolves and all kinds of stuff. You never saw that show, Darren McGavin?
No, never did.
Oh, well, yeah, it was a lot like the X-Files, but I think you're right. It could, you could easily turn this into a series, television show or whatever by just, like you said, moving on to different aspects of the whole thing. Because the plot that Stan Stanislaw exposes isn't something he's necessarily going to solve or save. It's something that's ongoing, and you could easily keep that going in a television series. Good idea.
Now, actually, you can probably end this series with him saving the world from this present danger, but then there's another danger right behind it from somewhere else or similar. The book that I'm reading right now, Final Deception, has already hinted at, for example, that there were 3 different factions of Anunnaki. If that would be the case, there could be 3 different things right there, angles of people that would be trying in different ways to have an end time scenario.
Yeah. The Nephilim definitely were segmented. Goliath himself had brothers, which is one of the reasons that David picked up more than one stone when he went after Goliath. And it says later that David's mighty men, they were killing giants left and right after that, because David had kind of set the bar, that these guys could be killed. So a lot of giants were killed, and they were of different races, Anakin and
kind of gave them the confidence.
Yeah. They were open season on the bullies.
Yeah, I know that David used 5 stones, and a person might ask, why 5? I mean, after all, if you don't kill them with the first stone or knock them out with the first one, you're not going to have a chance to reload that sling.
Yeah, that's why it's cool to read the Bible. There's a lot of stuff between the lines, and that's one of them, is that Goliath had brothers, and David knew it.
Yeah, now, that is a pretty well-known common fact to at least most people that's been to Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it was written in the Bible, I think, that him and his brothers had 6 fingers and 6 toes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If I remember correctly, I think I remember seeing that part in there. And I think the whole thing about him being able to kill Goliath had to do with the fact that or knock him out was where he hit him at with the stone right there between the eyes at the top of the bridge of the nose.
Yeah. Well, and David had a lot of experience, too, with facing, it says he killed a lion and he killed a bear. So for being a little kid or teenager at best, he was pretty fearless.
Yeah, he was a scrappy little boy.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything you want to add on before we run out of the last 8 minutes, or any other projects you want to mention or anything like that?
Yeah, there's some things I'm working on that I can't talk about, which is terrible because we've been dancing around this whole plot with Xposure. One of the things I've done in the past that you know of is I've written sermons for various films that have come out as part of a PR package. So as part of a PR package for how when they promoted Chronicles of Narnia or The Passion of Christ, if churches wanted to buy that movie or show it in their church or, rent out a theater, the movie could be sent along with other PR pieces like posters, bulletin inserts, handouts, and also sermons that could be read or modified. And I've been doing a lot of that lately in the last year or so, writing sermons to promote different movies. The most famous one was God's Not Dead. I had a 4-part sermon series for that had over 20,000 downloads. And right now I'm working on another sermon for a movie that's coming out in October that I can't talk about, but it's going to be very, very big. So I've done that about, 10 or 12, 15 times, different movies, different sermons.
PHILLIP HOPERSBERGER, the world's most secretive man.
Yeah, HOPERSBERGER.
HOPERSBERGER. Oh, I did it again.
Yeah, you got it right the first time when you introduced me, though. You got HOPERSBERGER correct, but I don't care. I'll answer about anything.
I'll get it right yet. If I have to burn my tongue, I'll get it right. I have trouble with certain names for some reason, but I don't mean to.
That's okay, holy man.
It wouldn't be the first one on that. I've actually read somewhere that the name Holloman actually came, well, in some cases from the holy men of old, and it got morphed into Holloman. In other cases, it stood for somebody who lived by the hollow.
Yeah.
Or in the hollow.
Yeah, kind of like Cooper comes from the guys that worked on the wagon wheels. They were Coopers.
That may be where I have a problem with your name at is, I think there was a movie out called Hooper once.
Yeah, with Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds. And I think, got that name Hooper stuck in my mind from that movie. And then when I see your name, I just keep Messing it up, in other words.
Wasn't Holloman the guy that was in Police Story with Angie Dickinson?
I'm not sure. I didn't used to watch that a lot. Was there a Holloman in Police? Was it Police Story with Angie Dickinson? You said
Police Woman.
A Police Woman with Angie Dickinson.
Earl Holloman, I think.
There is an actor named Earl Holloman I looked up, but I don't know if he was in that or not.
Yeah, he was. I think he was the guy that was with Angie Dickinson in Police Story. But anyway, yeah, I've been working on a lot of sermons for different movies. One that was really good was The Ultimate Life, and it was a sequel with James Garner, who just passed away. He did a movie before that called The Ultimate Gift, and very interesting, very well done movie. Another one that's coming out is called A Long Way Off. It's a story about the prodigal son in Luke 15. Very well done movie. There's another one that's coming out that's very good, also called The Song. It's about a country singer, kind of in the mode of Johnny Cash, how he gets fame, and just a terrific soundtrack. Very good movie, The Song. So that's something else I've been doing to pay the bills, I guess.
So you've been working on all these movies all this time that's keeping you away from exposure.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Yeah. Gotta work when you can. Make hay while the sun shines.
Well, you gotta pay the bills first before you can do anything else, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly wish you luck with all of that, and it's come up about that time that we usually shut down here. You got any last minute thoughts you want to spread out though before you escape?
I would say if you want to read any of the samples that I've written, sermons or otherwise, you can go to my website, totallyRighteousCopy.com, and that's spelled righteous, as you said, WRITEOUS. And my screenplay is Something Great, and the novel is Xposure. You can find them both on Amazon or on your link where you get a kickback. And thanks for having me, Royce.
Do you also have any YouTube videos or...
Yeah, I have 2 videos for each of the books, one for Something Great and one for Xposure. They're movie trailers. Yeah.
So if y'all want to go watch those, that might give you something of an idea. It ain't going to give you any more information than what we did, but it's still interesting to watch.
Right, yeah.
All righty. Well, with that, I'm going to say good night. I want to thank all the people for listening. Couldn't have a show without my listeners anymore, and I could have one without a guest. You guys be good. Don't forget to come see me tomorrow over at www.freedomslips.com at 1 p.m. Central. I'm going to be talking to Paul Craig Roberts about his book, How America Was Lost, and then we're going to take a break and come back, and I'm going to be talking to David Roundtree and Robert Luntz about their book, Demon Street. So y'all join in, and don't forget, you go to freedomslips.com, click on the chat room link at the top, and that'll take you into the chat room. You just choose any username, and it'll pop you right in. You don't even have to really sign up. They just need a name for you in the chat room. Y'all be good, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Well...